specifically the Latino and Latinx community. And I am really excited to be here and to share with y'all our knowledge and experience when it comes to self-care. And we hope that in the throughout this presentation, as well as the recordings of it, that you all can serve as experts on this. Uh, the Spanish is coming into me. I'm just like, oh, what's it in English? Um, this subject, there we go. Um, because Miriam and I do not work in rural communities. Um, I have had the privilege of visiting Kate at the Moab Free Clinic and doing peer support over there. However, I don't live in a rural community, nor do I have any like lived experience in rural communities. And so we just want to make sure that we share our experience from what we know, and that you all who are in rural communities, who live in rural communities, who are practicing in rural communities can also add in with your experience. Miriam, you want to choose yourself?
Yeah. Again, thank you everyone for being here and for wanting to hear more about this subject. As Natha mentioned, um, we don't live in rural areas, but self-care is something very important to me. But before that, yeah, my name is Miriam Gutierrez. I'm a certified peer support specialist. I've been working in this field and with Latino behavioral for 2 years now. And I work with youth. So I work with 12-year-olds up to like 30-year-olds. Um, so I love this job. I'm passionate. Like I think it's important to learn about self-care, not just for the people we serve, but for ourselves too. And I think it's really easy sometimes to forget about taking care of ourselves in this field. So I'm excited to be here and share some knowledge and some strategies for you all.
All right. So first, we wanted to kind of address the rural challenges, the challenges that come with working in rural communities. I think it's and just like the experience I had working at Moab Free Health Clinic, and also being a supervisor of the Moab team that travels to Moab every month, I've been hearing a lot of experiences that are not similar to the urban community. And I can just see like the cultural difference that comes from a rural community versus an urban community. From what our team has experienced, we've seen that there are just like a lot of uh, intersections and um, cross, yes, cross on what is like the serving practitioners, and also the just being a community member. Like, for example, like a lot of people who are working in that field are also recognized within their community. For example, in the grocery store, in, the dentist's office, you could be working as a therapist, but then somehow your dentist knows you because you see their child. And so there's a really kind of connection everywhere. There's a lot of blurred boundaries on like how, as a doctor, I could go to the grocery store and then I see a patient of mine, and then that patient starts asking me questions, and it would be kind of rude to tell them to go away because I'm not a doctor right now, but it would also, it would be really complicated. And so we see that patients are in the community as well as practitioners who are in the community, like they kind of see each other. And so there's not a lot of like space to be, you could say, someone without the title or that experience. There's also a lot of limited resources, which limits the opportunities that just a normal community member may have to access different sorts of self-care opportunities. And for the practitioner too, there's just a lot of um, limitations to where and how they can spend their time. And obviously, the last one, there's just like a really high need for practitioners in rural communities. And unfortunately, there's just not enough providers. There's a lot of pressure already built in to organizations, agencies serving these communities, knowing that they won't be able to reach everyone. But for the actually, let's go. Let's keep going, and then I'll ask the question. Um, but I found actually a research paper on rural communities and rural practitioners with um, and self-care opportunities. And it says here that practitioners often wear many hats. Peach et al. Suggests that there is an interconnectedness of, that was the word, interconnectedness of rural practitioners and their communities. Practitioners are likely to be embedded in the community, taking on multiple roles that may blur professional and personal boundaries. And so it's not that community members want to blur that line or that they want to cross boundaries, but it's just bound to happen with the limited amount of people around the area. Everybody knows each other, everybody's connected with each other. And so we start to see these like boundaries being blurred of like, um, am I going to be a doctor when I come out of my house, or am I going to be John, or am I just going to be just another random community member? There's a lot of like stress behind that. Now, I want to ask for the people that are currently here, um, are there any other challenges that I have not mentioned that you guys find in working in rural communities?
I think you covered the major ones.
Okay. Yeah, I know I'm preaching to the choir, so if I'm missing something, please let me know. And so, when it comes to
Say,
self,
Nata, I think it's really our accessibility, just that
okay,
we seem really accessible. So it's hard to be able to make that boundary of like, and keep it healthy and of when I don't have to be, helping when we can be separate. So that's really, I think, a big struggle with a lot of rurals, just we're accessible so
mhm,
much that that's a big part of being able to have self-care with when you're always accessible. So.
right, right. There's not a lot of opportunities for you to limit your accessibility when you also are part of the community. Thank you, Carissa. So now shifting focus into what is self-care. I like to just read this definition of self-care because I felt it was the best way to define what we're actually talking about. It's the multidimensional, multifaceted process of purposeful engagement in strategies that promote healthy functioning and enhance well-being. So, watching TV for 3 hours, I don't know if it's purposeful engagement to promote healthy functioning. Uh, and that's where I'm trying to get to, like when we talk about self-care, a lot of people think like, oh, I'm just gonna take a bath or go on a walk or watch TV or relax and stuff like that, which are all great things and can promote healthy functioning. But I do want to focus on like the purposeful engagement. There is a difference between sitting in front of a TV for 5 hours watching Game of Thrones or like um, giving yourself that hour to relax, to really just not think about anything, and then moving on to another activity that will promote healthy functioning and then enhance your well-being. And so I think there in this definition, there are two different sort of self-cares here. There is the personal self-care, which we talk about, like the physical activities, routine, structure, hygiene, taking bath, shower, things like that. And then there's also this professional self-care, which includes having a work-life balance, boundaries, which are hard in this situation, professional relationships and boundaries within those professional relationships, caseload, how many clients are we seeing, how many patients are we seeing, and just like physical demands, like some of us work in very physically demanding jobs. So some of us have to sit for 8 hours. Some of us need to be bending down. Some of us have to be literally talking to people and handling crises, or having to feel, look, smell, hear things that we don't want to, but are part of our jobs. And so this ends up being like our how are we taking care of ourselves in the professional setting? Because it's not just about what you do outside of the job, it's also about what you're doing inside the job. And so I want to ask y'all this question, like, in simple terms, like, is self-care a luxury that you can afford? And I put luxury with quotation marks because I guess we'll talk about it later. But it is for a lot of people defined as a luxury to take care of yourself. Because sometimes for them it means, going to the gym and they don't have money for the gym or time. It means going on a walk, but they've got 5 kids that they need to take care of and also a job. And so there's a lot of limitations to self-care. And we need to start understanding, like, is it really a luxury? And along with that, like, what is self-care for you? Is it the watching TV for 3 hours? Is it reading? Is it being able to spend some time to yourself? And something that we don't really think about is that professional self-care. What does self-care in the professional setting mean as well? So just a lot of like rhetorical questions that I want us to just think about while we go through this presentation.
So now, like, right, that we've talked about these points, I have like an understanding of why self-care might not be happening, or why it's harder for it to start, for us to be doing it, would be some of those points that Nata talked about, right? Like the accessibility that Carissa brought up, that you guys are always available, just because it's so small over there. What I wanted to talk about, like, why does it matter? Why is it important, right? Like, why even with all these like barriers or challenges, why does it matter? Why is it so important that we try and make sure we are taking care of ourselves and we are practicing self-care? We are looking for those things that help us purposely engage, so that we can continue functioning healthy, right? So as many of us know, like with our patients, not that touched a little on like having to do things we don't want to do, or having to deal and put up with certain situations. It's a lot of work, and we spend a lot of time taking care of others, and especially like with mental health. In my experience, it's dealing a lot with their challenges and what they're going through, right? And sometimes we're going through stuff too, but we have to set our stuff aside and show up for that person, right? And be able to walk with them in those like difficult times and challenges. And so sometimes even like we can absorb some of that stress because it's people we care about, or it's our job is about caring for those others. So we transfer that stress over to us, and then sometimes we have our own stress, whether that's like in our work or at home, that we have to carry with. And so the more, I like that little image, right? You got to nourish to flourish. So we got to make sure we're like taking care of ourselves. We got to make sure that we are also at a good point and practicing self-care so that we can go ahead and give that to others, and we still can continue to show up for others, show up for our patients, show up for our family. So self-care enhances the ability to live fully, vibrantly, and effectively. And it also reminds us that we are valid and we are priority, right? Sometimes I've experienced or have had it where like, especially with parents, since working with youth, I also work with the parents. Parents feeling guilty for taking time to go and do something for themselves, right? And being like, well, I could spend that time with my kids, or I could have bought my kids that donut, that they want to buy for themselves. And so remembering that part of self-care is also like, it's okay to like make ourselves a priority. Like if we don't take care of ourselves, then we're going to end up like crashing and burning, and then we impact everybody around us, right? And then everybody is also like, especially in small towns or in families, in my experience, if my mom was mad, the whole house just felt it, and we were all kind of like on edge and like, oh, don't talk to my mom right now because she's gonna yell and she's gonna, and so everybody feeds off of everybody's energy. So remembering, like, you gotta nourish to flourish. That's what I got for you guys.
So we are going to kind of reassess what self-care is and put it in the terms of wellness. Like Miriam mentioned, like it's important that we address these parts of our lives so that we can flourish. And who knew that we, as providers, as practitioners, also have human needs? A lot of us who work as practitioners, we start adopting this feeling of like invincibility, like we're gonna fight through this, like I need to do this, I have to do this. But we start forgetting that we're also humans too, with lots of problems and deficiencies, and we are also in need of wellness. And so here we have seven, one, two, three, yeah. Oh, eight. Yeah, eight areas of wellness. Each one with its own like characteristics and needs that as a human being we are in need of. For example, if we are not in the best environment, we will not be able to function as well as if we were in a safe, enclosed, and just comforting environment. I had a client who was living in a homeless shelter, and that was one of our first like goals. Is just like we need to get out of there. We need to make sure that you have or are in a good environment, in a safe environment, so that you can move forward into other areas of your life. So each one of them kind of plays into each other, and I wanted to just address three of them because I think these three are specifically important when it comes to rural communities. Miriam. All right. So first we have the social well-being. And so why am I mentioning this? Because as we just talked about, the boundaries between personal and professional relationships are very blurred. Like Carissa mentioned, there can be like a lot of availability for the practitioner because they are part of the community, which means that there's not a lot of time or there's not like social connections that are not perhaps related to that professional self. So what do we see? We see like that practitioners aren't able to disconnect from their clients or their title. Everybody just knows everybody. There's literally no anonymity, which is very available, you could say, in a urban setting where, once you walk out the door, you probably, and you see someone, you will probably never see that person again. But in rural communities, you probably see that person every time because they walk the same way that you walk through. And so, some suggested strategies are first being able to connect to a wider range of supportive professional networks. And what I'm talking about is like, because we have this social need, because we have this connection of and like need of belonging, we need some sort of support system. And when it comes to our professional experiences, like what better way to connect than with something that we love, which is our job, our being a practitioner, being a doctor, a social worker, therapist, knowing that there is someone out there that also knows my experience or what I'm going through, and we can connect off of that. Um, there are a lot of like support groups, there are a lot of like professional groups that connect that are not necessarily in your area, but that are available for anyone that has access to internet. Now, the second point is kind of contrary, you could say, because we're saying like, um, how can you integrate yourself when there are these blurred boundaries? And this is where kind of like culture plays in of, for example, integrating yourself into, um, let's say, church, which is some very common here in Utah. You are part of a congregation, so because you are part of a congregation, you are meeting that social need. And also there are boundaries that can and may be put within your like congregation, you could say. So you integrate yourself in that community with already established relationships. I mean, established boundaries such as like when I'm at church, like I don't want to talk about patients or doctors or things like that. And something that is like really, really important is to establish your normalcy, and understand, let everyone know like that there is that there is a person behind the title. And this is a very like vulnerable kind of ask, you could say, because this is sometimes we use our titles or our roles as protection. And because I am a doctor, then I don't have to, um, you could say, participate in this or be part of the community, or because I'm this, like, I don't have to be in this situation. But when I take that away from myself, like, what am I? What do I like? Where do I want to be? Sometimes those roles can be limitations. And so when we take away that limitation, when we take off that badge, who are we? And that's something that we need to decide. And we also need to establish. Um, any other strategies when it comes to like the social well-being? Any comments out there?
So you brought up the church one. Um, Oftentimes it'll be like, oh, because you work with, difficult children, then we want you to work with difficult children. And when you try to push back on that or set the boundary, um, it's not respected a lot. So it's hard because then you feel a little more alienated in those situations. um, or like you can't trust the people in like a community that formerly was a support. So I liked
Right.
that you talked about connecting to a wider range of supportive professional networks. I think that's where that could really play into that because sometimes there isn't really escaping. So being able to create something that's outside of maybe our communities is maybe a really good idea to
Mhm.
help with that.
Yeah. And I think that's a common experience, Chris, of people not respecting our boundaries, even if we've already established them. Hey, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to be in this role, in this situation. And they're like, oh, but you're really good at it, blah, 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 blah. And it just kind of like, you know, ruins it for us, you could say, or it irks us. It makes us again put ourselves into like a okay, if I'm not getting my needs met here, where can I or who can I trust? And sometimes, yeah, it means stepping out of our comfort zones and finding more creative ways to connect, which is thanks to the internet, could be the internet as well. Right. Now we have the intellectual well-being, which is recognizing our creative abilities and finding ways to expand knowledge and skills. Sometimes being in rural communities, there is, kind of monotonous days of like wake up, go to work, and then because I can't do this and this and this because of my role, and I just go home and we kind of recycle and repeat. And there's limited financial resources and just resources in general. Like if I go to the rec center, literally everyone's going to be there. If I try and attend like the local college or university, like everyone that I know is going to be there. And so there's a lot of like um, limitations to increase or feed this intellectual need of having something more to do other than work. And so these other strategies could be of finding other diverse work opportunities and or volunteer opportunities that make us feel like we're not doing the same thing over and over again, that we're not repeating the same cycle over and over again. And so, for example, this means, if we're heavily involved in the medical field, we go somewhere where there is nothing to tell you about medical field, like for example, going to the community garden and doing something that is outside of the scope of what we're doing. Um, or yeah, kind of like that. Sometimes we just need to expand our professional scope. Obviously, there's a lot of trainings, opportunities in our online that we can do. And I like attending YouTube University. And I want to just like focus on like the intellectual part of our well-being. Like this is not to, just learn something random, but it's helping us to expand knowledge and skills. It's helping us to feel excited, feel like we have something to look forward that isn't just work. Even though we may love and enjoy our job, we human beings need some sort of stimulation outside of our normal routines. Um, and then it's important to also like kind of identify the self out of the roles and titles. And that's something that I talked about before of really beginning to understand like, okay, yes, I'm a doctor from 10 to 5 or 10 to 6. Um, but what about the rest of the time? Like who do I play? What do I like? What do I do? Um, and unfortunately, everyone around me thinks I'm a doctor, but what else am I? And that's something that is very important for us to like kind of process ourselves. And just exploring other hobbies and interests that are outside of the the field that we live in. And so, yeah, these are our intellectual needs. And then emotional needs, which is like a big part of what my profession is about. And it's just about coping effectively with life and creating satisfying relationships. And so what we're facing are these, big, huge caseloads, lots of lots of people that we need to help. There's a lot of, and then sometimes, we're not doing that great. Our personal life isn't that great either. We may have a mental illness or mental condition. For people that are single and are living in rural areas, that's still very hard because there is no support. You don't even have a partner. And so having that like emotional or relational support is already hard. The ability to create relationships and keep them, like you could be really good at your job, but like, do you have the social skills necessary to build relationships outside of your profession? And so those are all things that we can face when it comes to our emotional needs. However, there are things that we do need to take care of, and so we do that through therapy. And there's always the saying that's like all therapists have their own therapist, and that is very true. And I say that from experience. Like it's hard to deal with other people's things when you have your own things, and then other people's things bring up your own things. It's a whole cycle. And there's also support groups. I know support groups are not very like well accepted or well recognized. However, it's so affirming to hear that someone else is going through somewhat of a similar experience and we're not alone. And yes, these support groups don't have to be in your rural community. They can be online support groups. They can be support groups that you attend outside of your town. But as you may start hearing like or feeling like these are purposeful decisions we have to make. It's not just things that just present themselves to us. They're literally things that we have to go and look for in order to satisfy this need. Um, and obviously just developing new coping skills, making sure that, when we were working in an urban community, we love to go to the gym, but now going to the gym feels really awkward because everyone's there. And so we have to find new coping skills and new things that we want to use to work on so we can get better.
Cool. So now that we have talked about our well-being and like what can impact that, what are the 8 sessions, not sessions, what are they? Parts of wellness and well-being, right? These are some self-care things that we can do for each of those wellness, right? So like for emotional, learning to manage your stress, having emotional maturity, forgiveness, compassion, kindness for ourselves, because we're really good at having all those things for other people. But when it comes to ourselves, we're kind of like, nah, right? Like, I don't deserve that. I can't do that. Like we give ourselves a lot of, I can't think of another word, a lot of crap, right? And with others, we're able to be compassionate, be kind, and so forgive them. So remembering that those 3 things are things that we can do for ourselves too. And by doing that for ourselves, those are some self-care types, self-care activities. Right. And then we also talked about like personal, like in learning who we are. Like it's a lot of work internally to learn what things we like doing, right? Like what's our hobbies, what are hobbies that we can do in these communities and still be able to take our role out of it and just be a person, not a doctor or a mental health provider or a therapist, right? Like just being Miriam or just being Netta or just being Carissa or Christopher, or, just being a person in society, and making sure that we have like we identify who we are. We know who we are. And that can be part of self-care too, like just exploring all these different hobbies and exploring who we are, what we want to be, what's next for us, and like, remembering that at the end of the day, it's just like being able to do something to function healthy. Saving, even financial, right? Like, I don't know if like to anybody like reading, excuse me, reading this list or reading these different types, if there's something that like sticks out to you all. But we have all these different spaces and all these different things. It's self-care isn't just a one thing, one box, right? There's self-care for each aspect of our life, each part of our life. As you can see, like there's physical, emotional, social, spiritual, personal, space, financial, and work. And with space, that just like sometimes we don't have control over space, like especially the youth. It's just kind of where this is where we live, or this is what's up, this is where you got, but knowing that there's still things we can do to take care of ourselves within this space. Same with financial, like I know finance, money, like bills, all that stresses me out, right? And because I know that that's a stress, there's things that I can do to take care of myself in those points when I do have to deal about paying bills. And I don't know if like with the economy right now, right? Like it's so stressful, but knowing that we can budget, we can learn how to save, there's money management, like stuff like that to help us in these times. Any questions or anything that like sticks out to anybody that wants to like share?
I think just balancing all of those aspects is a challenge.
Right, yeah, and it's a lot. And I think like for me, I don't know about you guys, when I first saw this, it was kind of overwhelming because it is a lot to balance, and it's a lot like, whoa, like how am I supposed to remember all these different things or all these different ways to take care of myself? But I think the way like that's helped me a lot is just to approach one thing at a time, right? And then if we stay consistent with it, like it becomes like naturally, right? And like we'll talk more a little bit further down about ways to check in with ourselves and learning what our signs are and how we can avoid so it's not as overwhelming. So speaking of that, sometimes I like this picture because we really should take a break. I think even in my car, I hate filling up gas. Laundry and filling up gas are like the worst things. For me, I wish if I could hire somebody to just do that for me all the time, I think I would be solid. But it's because what happens to me, I wait till I'm at an empty to fill up gas, instead of like when I'm like a quarter and I'm like, oh, I should stop now that I have time. So then I don't have to be like on a rush the next morning where like, oh, I'm late to work, but I have to stop and get gas and like, So similar to that, it's what we should do when we need to like take a break, right? And a lot of us are actually, speaking for myself, like it's hard to take a break because we get so caught up in our work. And I can imagine even like with you guys being in rural communities, like being able to like, at least I know that if I leave my office, there's like a very low chance I'm going to see my patients or my clients, right? But I think like with you guys, you probably know you're going to run into them in the store or the grocery or like, so it's harder to turn off that, oh, I'm not in work mode anymore. I'm going to just be myself, right? And so remembering we need to take breaks. We need to start checking in with ourselves. Like I know for me, I'm in the yellow orange when I start dreading like going into work. Like if I start being like, oh, I have so many things to do and like I don't want to do them and stuff, I know that means that's a sign for me that I'm getting too empty, right? And before that took me a long time because I would be at like I was crying at work and I was trying to get things done. And that was me on empty, but I was still trying to like keep going, right? Um, I grew up with Mexican parents. And my parents were always like, I don't care if you're sick, I don't care if you gotta go to school, like that's your only job, like show up, show up, show up. So I think like that's engraved in me, and it's really hard to take a break, especially because I feel sometimes like, I'm sure some of you can relate, if you take a break, you become lazy or you can't handle it, right? But that's not true. Like we mentioned a little before, and I'll mention it again because I think that's what really helped me like click on the self-care and wanting to take care of myself. It's just like I can't give what I'm not, what I don't have. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I work with youth. So sometimes with youth, it's hard for them to tell me how they're feeling. So I use like this check-in tool, and I'm sure some of you might have this because I've also seen it when I go to my doctor's office, or in the ER where they're like, well, how bad is it? Or how hard is or how bad is your pain, right? And so we can use these tools too for ourselves and learning to identify what purple means for us or what an orange means, right? Like maybe I know that I need to start taking a break when I'm in a 3-4, but Nata can be at an 8-9, and that's where he needs to take a break. So we all have different capacities, and that's okay because we're all human and we could take breaks at different levels. It's just about understanding ourselves and knowing. So I would encourage you guys to think about like what does an 8 feel like for you guys, or what is orange for you guys, like what if I'm at an orange, like what does that mean? What are my behaviors? How am I acting? And that's if that's a sign for you to take a break, or do you feel like you can keep pushing, or like get to know yourself to that extent to be able to check in. And sometimes I think we get so busy and we're just go, 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 go that we even forget to check in. And we wait until we're on empty to be like, oh, I should take some time off. Oh, I need PTO. When our body or yeah, our body's giving us signs beforehand that like, hey, we're getting there. Like we need to take a breather and stuff. Right? And so we kind of talked a little bit about this, and I would like it to be a discussion. I know there's a few of us. So however we can do this, it might be just a fast discussion. But we understand, and I'm sure we all know, self-care is important, right? Like I think in our fields we talk about it, you hear it all the time. But why aren't we doing it? Like I would like to hear from some of you. Like, what are your, like, are you doing it? Maybe I'm wrong and I'm assuming that we're not doing it, but you guys are doing it. So, like, what are some thoughts on that?
I think even just saying that you will do it in the future and just putting it off because you have another thing that piles up and you're like, oh, if I could just get this one thing done, and then it becomes another and another, and then you realize that your tank's empty.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. I think that's literally what happens with my car. I'm like, oh, I could go a little bit forward. Oh, I have like 2 more times to go to work, and then all of a sudden it's like, I need to fill up. So I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
I love that. I think for me, it's so easy to kind of ignore mindfulness principles. Like one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm making this mindfulness course, and so it's on my mind, which is why I'm sharing it right now. But if I spend just a single day not taking like a 5 minute mindful break in between activities, just something small, like the stress starts to pile up, and by the end of the day, I can't really connect with my family. And if I can't do that, then I can't really start taking care of myself. But um, it's so easy to kind of like let that slip just a little bit. There's this analogy that I heard a while ago that I love. It's when you ride a motorcycle, it's very easy to keep it upright, but if you start to let it tip a little bit, it falls over really, really fast. And so you just got to kind of be very aware of where that needle is, so that way you can make sure that you're on top of it. But that's the biggest one for me is just like kind of like making sure I'm still taking care of myself, even in the middle of a busy day.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Thank you. And it's hard, right? Because we are busy and we're just thinking like, I know I've thought at times like, if I finish all my work, then I'm solid. Like, so I keep going, right? But yeah, no, it's important to take those breaks in the middle of the day, even like I think just taking a deep breath sometimes is all we need, right? And like can help so much. I think like there's been days where I'm like, I don't think I'm like I'm breathing, because I'm just like going from one thing to another. So I love that. Thanks. Um, what other like facets of our lives or work do you feel like we need to improve on to be able to take care of ourselves? I think we touched a little bit more, right, of like the work we have. Um, but yeah, sorry, I got distracted by the chat. But yes. But yeah, like what other things or ideas are going or thoughts are going through your heads? These any of these questions that you see.
I think mine's a mindset. Oftentimes, I feel like I have to earn being able to do any sort of self-care or earn the right to take a break or that's been hard with me is changing that mindset. Like even today, I like when we were starting, Nata was talking, and I even wrote it down to remind myself that there's a difference between self-care versus checking out. Um, I think sometimes we think, oh, just we're switching things and I can just kind of mentally check out for a minute, but that's not what I needed. So sometimes doing something that I don't need or because I that's what I felt like I earned, I don't know. It's a mindset for me, and I think really I need to take some self-reflection and really because I'm really, really bad at self-care. And I think I need to figure out like what are my signs and what is it that I truly need? Because I don't think I've done that.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you for being honest. Like it's hard. I'm giving you guys a presentation on this, right? And even I struggle sometimes with self-care. And I think it's because we're people that cares. And we obviously really care about our job, right? And care about the people we serve and help. And it's it's hard. And I think also sometimes what happens is people's idea of self-care is like, let's go get a massage, let's go spend money, like shopping and all these things. And those can be part of self-care, right? But as Natha mentioned at the beginning, like the definition that we use is like a purposeful engagement to promote healthy functioning, right? So it can just be like doing some mindfulness and breathing or taking our lunch time and actually sitting down and eating. I think sometimes like I get my lunch and I'm working and still eating, and it's those little things too that can be part of our self-care. And like it doesn't have to be a luxury, right? Like how we have it on that slide, it's a necessity. It's something we need to keep going. I don't know.
So,
Yeah, not that if you wanted to add anything else.
well, I just want to like get on a soapbox real quick and just kind of um step away from this picture and just kind of look at the bigger picture of kind of like the society and the systemic barriers that we face. Like we're working out in like this very capitalistic society where it is like time equals money. If you're not giving your time, if you're not spending the time, the appropriate time to do your job, then you're wasting time, you're wasting money, and thus like affecting our perception of worth of ourselves, of our agency. And Kate is in charge of the Moab Free Health Clinic. If she takes time to take care of herself, like, is that going to affect the whole clinic? And so it's like I think it's important to understand like this isn't just about our responsibility and that we're like, oh, we're really bad for not taking care of ourselves because we're really bad people. It's like, it's not really that. It's like we live in such society that has trained us to work our little butts off, and give so much of ourselves, without like any understanding or recognition of our own humanity and our own limitations. And so when we are enforcing boundaries and or putting like routines of self-care, we're literally fighting a whole system of cogs and um, wheels that are literally working against us to make us feel like we're not doing enough. And so when we are making these changes, we are literally like making systemic changes within our own life. And that's why it's so hard. That's why it's so difficult, because it's not just, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, put an hour in my schedule to go to the gym. Like, no, this is an hour that I could be using somewhere else, but I need to do my own processing of like, okay, this is combating a bigger person than just an hour. So yeah, just my own little soapbox. Because at the end right here it says self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And it's a luxury. We think it's a luxury because everything is associated with money, with worth. But how what's the worth of our life and our health? Like, does that have anything to do with our time? Like, are we prioritizing what's most important? What is most important? Anyways, that's it. That's my soapbox.
Thank you. So yeah, like we were saying, right? Self-care is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And like something you guys will always hear me like kind of talk about a lot of times. And this is because this is what helped me be like, oh my gosh, this is so true, right? Like talking about what Nata's saying in the systemic changes. I don't know if like how many of you have traveled on an airplane or have seen movies, but I'm sure you guys have heard of like when they drop this mask, the oxygen mask, right? And they say you need to put on the mask on yourself first and then everybody else around you, right? And so that's always like my reminder of like, I need to, like I mentioned earlier, like sometimes I know that like my mood or if I'm feeling stressed or stuff, then like my team can feel that too. And then everybody, and then like they contain, how do you say it? Like contagious? It's kind of contagious, right? And other people in the office start feeling that energy. And then before we know it, like, I don't know if it's happened in your guys' office, but it's happened at Latino sometimes. Everybody's energy is kind of off. And we're like, oh, like everybody's tired, everybody's, you know. And so it's that reminder of like, I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself so I can show up for others so that I can help others, right? You can't give what you don't have. So that's just my little reminder for you guys is remember to put on that mask on yourself first. It's not selfish. It's not being lazy. It's like necessity. Like you need to breathe to be able to help others, right? And so that's why they say that mask thing. And then I know we're almost out of time, so just real quick, I have some self-care examples. I'm sure you guys have all heard of these. Like I said, it doesn't have to be going and getting a massage done, even though if you can, 10 out of 10 will recommend. It could be just taking deep breaths during the day, going on walks, watching a movie, and then like making sure this movie is something you want to watch, not your partner, not your kids, like you taking the time that it's something you want to watch. Laughing. I love to laugh. I love jokes. So if you have any jokes, let me know. Going out with friends and family, right? Finding that time to connect with our support system, to show up, be there, just laugh, have a good time. And then clean and cook. Those can go either way. They can either be really big stressors, or they can help with our self-care, right? Because we just get very mindful and are in the moment and just focus on the cooking or just focus on cleaning. But yeah, I have a video that we can end with just to like, again, I work with youth and I enjoy this video. It helps me. It's like a reminder of affirmations and self-care. But before I like play it, do you guys have any questions or anything? Okay, let me know if you can hear it. Again, it's just fun, just laughing.
Affirmations are positive statements that help us to challenge and overcome when you're not feeling good and have negative thoughts. So repeat after me. Come on, everyone. There is no one.
The sound is gone.
I get better every single day. I get better every single day. I choose to feel happy. I choose to feel happy. My family loves me so much. My family loves me so much. I care about others. I learned from my mistakes. Affirmations are fun and cool. They help us heal and they help us grow. If you love to learn and want to keep feeling good, let's say some more. Follow me, let's go. I am responsible. I am responsible. I get better every single day. I get better every single day. I'm surrounded by love. I'm surrounded by love. Every problem has an answer. Every problem has an answer. I deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel good. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. I believe in myself. I believe in myself. I control my own happiness. I control my own happiness. Now we know some new affirmations that we can choose and learn to say. So next time you need a little inspiration to help you have more of a positive day. Affirmations.
Yeah, so that's my little video for you guys. I love it. Snoop Dogg is actually what's it called? He actually did it because he has grandkids now, and so he's releasing kids music. So if you guys want to check it out. But thank you so much. And we're here if you have any questions or anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I feel like
you.
I got a lot from the presentation myself, so.
Mm-hmm. Are the slides going to be available? That's what they were wondering in the chat.
Yeah, we can share the slides.
That would be awesome. Thank you. But yeah, we'll go figure some stuff out, get better at some stuff.
Practice some
good.
affirmations.
Well, thank you both so much. And hopefully I'll see you at the clinic.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you so much for having us. Please let us
Bye.
know if there's anything we can do for you. Bye.
Thank you.